This room right now, all are welcome to get on the rolls and make sure that you can help decide the outcome of this next election. But I thought before I did that, I would tell you a little bit about what we are for in this campaign, what we hope to achieve by winning this race. Very often we hear politicians tell us about what they're against and who they oppose and how bad the other guy is. Let me tell you who we are for. So, I just had a chance to meet Dr. Haynes, who is a professor here in the education department. She's helping to train the next generation of educators, of teachers, of counselors, and librarians. She and I were talking about that here in this county, the teacher on average is underpaid by $16,000 a year against the national average. That means that this teacher here is working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, when we want them working just one job, focus on those children in front of them, drawing forth a lifelong love of learning, making sure that that kid can overcome any challenges in his or her life. So I begin by saying that I'm for the educators. I want to make sure that we pay them enough just to have one job, that we allow them to focus on those kids by canceling the STAR test in the state of Texas, and they get it done at the end of the day, treating them with the dignity and respect that they deserve and that they are owed, right? I am for the kids in those classrooms who are well aware that we are 19 weeks after that shooting in Uvalde that claimed the lives of 19 kids. This current governor, we put the lives of those kids over the interests of the NRA or any common ground, bipartisan things. I am for that person who works their tail off, goes to school, plays by the rules, but today, because they don't have insurance, don't have the resources, don't have the good luck, cannot afford to see a doctor or a provider or go to a mental health care specialist. We check the stats. In this county, we don't have a full-time psychiatrist or psychologist. The ability to access mental health care in this country with distinction, come back with service-borne connected disabilities, wounds, and conditions, and don't want to be prescribed that opioid by the VA. And they tell me that there's something that they can use in this state, but to do so makes them a criminal in the eyes of the law. That's why I propose that we legalize marijuana in the state of Texas going forward. And given the fact, I just wanted to make sure everybody was paying attention. So, given the fact that this country incarcerates more of its own than any other, and this state incarcerates more of its own people than any other state in the union, and so many are there for non-violent drug offenses, including possession of marijuana, I want to make sure that we expunge the arrest records for anyone who has served time for that conviction, because it means that you no longer have to check a box on an employment application form. It means that you're more easily qualified for that student loan that can make the difference in your life. This is something that not just Democrats, but Republicans, independents, the people of Texas can get behind. It's what most of our fellow Americans have already been able to do in other states, and it's what we should be able to do in Texas. Last thing that I want to tell you, and then I thought I might take a question or two from those who are here. It is harder to vote or get your name on the rolls in Texas than it is in any other state in the union. And that voter suppression and voter intimidation is not targeted at people who look like me. As it always has been, its focus is on black and brown Texans throughout this state, making it less likely that they participate in the next election. 750 polling place locations have been shut down in this state, twice the number of the next closest state. Most of those closures located in the fastest growing black and brown neighborhoods across the state of Texas. You can use your license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at the polling place, but you cannot use your student ID at Wiley College to prove who you are at the polling place. It's very clear who they want to vote and who they do not want to vote in Texas. But let me say this. Two people that remind us that not only can we overcome these challenges, we've overcome them before against much longer odds. Marshall native and Wiley College graduate Lawrence Nixon in 1924, 100 years ago, almost 98 years ago, tried to break what was then known as the white primary in Texas. If you were black 100 years ago, by law, you were not allowed to vote. Downtown of El Paso fought this all the way to the United States Supreme Court, won not one, but two signal victories. By 1944, they had won the right to integrate our elections and set the path for LBJ in 1965, 20 years after that, to sign into law the Voting Rights Act of 1965, creating the first multiracial democracy in American history. Lawrence Nixon, for decades, she fought to make sure that there was full national federal recognition for Juneteenth as an American holiday. In the beginning, no one would take her seriously or listen to her or follow her lead. Nonetheless, in her 80s, I think at the age of 88, she began walking from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. to bring attention, to galvanize public opinion, and to make sure that we did the right thing. Last year, for the first time in this country's history, June 19, 2021, Juneteenth became a federally recognized holiday in the United States of America. That happened because of Wiley College, Opal Lee, Marshall, Texas. And it was my honor to march with many of you. I was here on June 19, 2021, marching in this community with so many of you, as you are right now, as you were back then, as we will going forward. We're going to overcome the challenges that are in front of us. And whether it's access to health care, or supporting our teachers, or doing something about our criminal justice system so that it treats all of us equally under the law, we are more than a match for these challenges, right? So here's the challenge before us right now, with 35 days until this election. We have got to make sure that not just those who are here, but those that we know in our lives, friends, family, classmates, neighbors, colleagues, that they get involved in this election as well. If they don't, then the voter suppression and the voter intimidation will have worked. And we cannot allow that to be our legacy. We've inherited the service and the sacrifice and the struggle of Opal Lee, of Dr. Lawrence Nixon, of so many others who preceded us. And what we do with this inheritance will determine our future and define us in the eyes of our kids going forward. So if you're interested in not just voting and not just getting registered to vote, but helping us to find others, we have a number of volunteers here in yellow. Reflective vests. They would be happy to sign you up to be part. It is a huge honor to be with you. Cynthia, why don't we take some questions from anybody who'd like to ask them?
Okay, if you raise your hand, I will come to you. And I'll ask the folks in the back of the room to please keep it down so the folks over here can hear, please. Thank you.
Hi, Beto. In regards to women's rights, are you pro-life or pro-choice?
I'm pro every woman making her own decisions about her own body, her own health. Thanks for asking this. To the question, we ran for Senate in 2018. Many of you supported us in that effort. We produced the largest voter turnout in Texas history since 1970. Young voter turnout, because of you and others who stepped up, was up 500% from the previous midterm election. But we still didn't get Ted Cruz at the end of the day. We lost by 216,000 votes. So the question is, what are we doing differently now to make sure that we win? Because given the stakes that we just described, a woman's ability to decide her future, anyone here's ability to vote in this next election, or frankly to have a democracy going forward after the year 2022, we cannot lose this one. There is no other choice but to win. A couple of things that look so good from our perspective that I want to share them with you. One, we have 92,000 volunteers who have signed up to knock on doors, meet voters where they're at, focused on those who are the targets of suppression to bring them into this election and make them the margin of victory. That's the most important. Two, we have the good fortune of running against Greg Abbott, who may very well be the worst governor in the United States of America right now. This guy, in the energy capital of the world, could not keep the lights on or the heat running or the power going for most of our fellow Texans who live in ERCOT and other parts of the state right now. Texas, because of him, leads the nation in the number of school shootings in America. In fact, gun violence, the leading cause of death for young people and teenagers. And this is a point that bears repeating. We know about Uvalde. We know about the massacre in El Paso, Sutherland Springs, Santa Fe High School, Midland, Odessa. 5 of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history have taken place in the last 5 years just in the state of Texas. But we also know this. Young Texans are gunned down every single day, 1, 2, 3 at a time. And it has become so numbingly common that their names no longer make the front page of the newspaper. We no longer see their faces on the nightly news. It is almost as if we've accepted this. But there is one group of Texans who is not happy. And it is the young Texans who are so often the victims of this gun violence, who are standing up to be counted at this moment of truth. The urgency of your generation, as we have seen in every major term of American history, is what will allow us to prevail at the end of the day. When Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act in 1965, we might like to think it's just to get it out of his own heart and out of kindness and goodness and being on the right side of history. But the truth is that Lyndon Johnson was forced to do the right thing by young people who gave him the power. John Lewis was 24 years old when he crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama on the 8th of March, 1965, nearly losing his life as he made it over that bridge, simply standing up and walking and marching for the right to vote. In the same way that John Lewis and other young people won that right through their service in 1965, I think it will be young people today who ensure that we bring this home and set Texas on the right track. Those are the big differences that I see right now. Thanks for asking. We're going to win this one. So the really good question, what would we do differently 19 weeks and counting since 19 children and 2 teachers were taken from us in the valley? Those kids defenseless against somebody armed with a weapon of war, an AR-15. Defenseless also against a governor who will not lift a finger to protect them and is more beholden to the NRA than he is to anyone else. So, legitimate question, what would we do differently? Here's where I have found some common ground across the state of Texas. 1, raise the age of purchase for an AR-15 or an AK-47 to at least 21. At a minimum, that buys us 3 more years for some intervention in that young person's life who is so troubled that they would take that firearm into a school and shoot defenseless, innocent little kids. Now, some will say, listen, Beto, criminals don't follow the law. And that's true, and that's what makes them criminals, right? But this young man in Uvalde patiently waited for his 18th birthday. He didn't try to acquire that AR-15 when he was 16 or 17. The law said that you have to be 18, so he waited until he was 18. If we had it at 21, at a minimum we buy 3 more years, some kind of intervention in that young man's life. Second idea, a red flag law. And all that means is that if you have that firearm in your possession and you are threatening to use it against yourself or use it against somebody else, it gives law enforcement the ability through due process to intervene before it is too late. That young man in Uvalde again, he was signaling so strongly what he intended to do that his friends called him the school shooter before he ever walked into that school and shot anybody. If we had a red flag law, we could have intervened, removed that firearm from his possession, and saved 21 lives in that community. Last idea, that's a universal background check. And all that means is that if you want to buy a gun or a firearm in the state of Texas, we just make sure that you do not have a history of self-harm or harming others in your life. If you have a history of using violence against those in your home, in your school, at your workplace, you probably should not have a firearm because there's a good chance that you will use it against yourself or against others. Today, in gun stores, we have a background check that you can buy from a private seller without having to go through that. A universal background check is supported by Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, and non-gun owners alike. So those 3 things will not avert every instance of gun violence, but they'll do a lot more to save many more lives across the state of Texas. And as governor, working with Republicans and Democrats, I'm convinced that I can get that done. Thanks for asking a really good question. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the call. My name is Tracy Ramos. I am the director of the William Brown Urban Justice Institute here in All right! My question is, first of all, I want to preface this by saying 33 years ago, I wrote some bad checks. I turned in a rental car late. I was charged with felony conviction. 33 years ago. Today, I'm a PhD from Prairie View University. And I stay director of criminal justice and pastor here in this city. And a business owner. I've done everything that a rehabilitated person should do. I've even been recommended for pardon by the previous administration that served right now. But I want to tell you about the problem that we're having a systemic problem. There are millions of people, just like I said, we got out of prison, did the right thing, became a tax-paying citizen, did everything we did, but we're still locked out of society. Today, despite all of the things that I've done, I can't even serve as a commissioner. I can't serve on the school board
No one should be defined or limited by the worst day in their life. Once you have paid your debt to society, you're off paper, you're working, you're teaching, you're contributing far more than you will ever be able to take back. I think that should be acknowledged, it should be rewarded, and you should be defined by the great work that you have done since then. I mentioned earlier that this country puts more of its own behind bars than any other country on the planet. So whatever we think of China or Russia or North Korea or Iran, we do this to more of our own than they do to theirs. And this state incarcerates more of its own than any other state in the Union. Wow. Another dynamic of this is disproportionate. Those who are serving time right now are black and brown. You know, this issue of marijuana that I brought up earlier. Yeah. All Texans, of all races and ethnicities, use the substance at roughly the same rate. But African American Texans are far more likely to be stopped, frisked, incarcerated, and upon release forced to check a box on every employment application form, much harder to qualify for a student loan, and barred sometimes from positions of public trust, just as the professor described. Now that's not only not doing anything good for those who are trying to do good for themselves and by extension all of us, it's really forcing Texans to lose out on the good work and the public service that they can provide. So criminal justice reform has to extend far beyond just making marijuana legal and expunging the arrest records for those who serve time for possession of that substance. It means working with you and others who are literally leaders in this field to make sure that we have the kind of restorative justice that we need in the state of Texas, not just to do right by and for one another, that should be enough, but to make sure that as a state we can do much better. And then one last thing. I mentioned that this is the most voter-suppressed, voter-intimidated state in the Union. But when our state has locked up more of its own, and therefore we have more returning citizens than does any other state, many of them do not realize that they can re-enfranchise after they are off paper. Texas does nothing to inform them that they are able to vote once again, once they have fully paid their debt to society. So of the millions of Texans who do not vote, though they are eligible to in our elections, an extraordinary number of them are those who have served time in our prisons and our jails across the state. We've literally never counted their votes. We never heard their voices. This extremism that defines our government today, the total abortion ban, no exception for rape or incest, these gun laws that are killing our kids in our classrooms, all these other things, that's not reflective of who we are as a people. It's certainly not reflective of the majority of our fellow Texans. These kind of reforms that we're talking about bring these voices and our fellow Texans in. It makes us a much better state and a much more vibrant democracy for it. I look forward to working with you to make sure that we get this right. Thank you for being here.
All right, this is going to be our last question.
Hi, Beto. My name is Ray Carter, also an Austin, Texas native. And my question for you today is, how will you be able to support college students like us in financial advice, like basically financial independence?
You got it. It's a great question. So, how do we support you and those who are coming up right now who want to be able to attend college or get post-secondary education or training in the career of their choice? I'm thinking about those who want to enter an apprenticeship program to become an electrician. 5 years where you earn while you learn. Those who want to come to attend Wiley or University of Texas at El Paso in my hometown. For many of our fellow Texans today, this is a dream that is out of reach. Through no fault of their own, but just through the luck or lack thereof of their parents. Because I think that's really all it is at the end of the day. And just as we said on this issue of criminal justice, not only does that hurt the aspiring student, it hurts all of us by extension, because we lose out on the benefit of the great things that they're going to be able to do over the course of their lives if they just have the education and training to do that. So a couple of ideas. For those who want to enter in-demand and underserved professions, I'm thinking about classroom educators, or librarians, or counselors, as we lose those positions by the thousands across the state of Texas. I'm talking about the psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and social workers that we need right here in this community and this county. I'm talking about nurses and others on the front lines as we still emerge from this pandemic. If you're willing to go into one of these professions that is so important for our community, I would love the state of Texas to clear the way for you, to ensure that you do not take on any debt on condition that you come back and serve the community that made it possible for 6 years. For me, this is a solid investment where we will recoup what we put in many, many times over. It will just believe in young people such as yourself. Furthermore, I want to make sure that at least the first 2 years of higher education, wherever you go in the state of Texas, also does not force you to take on debt or student loans, and all you're trying to do is better yourself so you can shoulder more of the burden. And last thing, and I'm mindful that I'm standing at the first historically black college created west of the Mississippi after the end of the Civil War. A point of pride for the state of Texas, and yet, having just been at Prairie View A&M last week, Texas Southern University the same day, Wiley College a little bit later this month, I'm well aware as I listen to students and the administrators in these schools that though we have the largest endowment for a public university in the country right now, the University of Texas at Austin, Texas A&M close behind, we have severely underfunded our HBCUs in the state of Texas. So I want to make sure that we up the funding and the opportunities for more young people to avail themselves of the world-class education you're getting right here at Wiley College today. Thanks for a great question. Appreciate it. Cynthia was kind enough to give me a few of the names of folks we want to make sure that we recognize who are either in positions of public trust or are aspiring to take them on. I want to make sure that you know that they're here. But I want to begin by thanking former county judge Anderson and his wife Christina, who helped us to organize today's event. I see Christina there. I think I see the judge right back here. Thank you. Every time we come to the state of Texas, she would be the first CPA to take this position on, and she's absolutely amazing, tireless, literally has been to every single part of this state, running to serve you in state office. Someone else who is absolutely tireless is our next member of Congress, I hope, from this region. JJ, do you want to come up and just say a few words real quick? This is your district, and I'll make sure people hear from you.
My name is Jamar J.J. Jefferson, and I'm running for Congress because I care about our future, and it needs to be funded. Congress has one simple job, to make laws and allocate the budget. Am I correct? We got to make sure that some money, resources, opportunities come in here for you. They don't come in for me in Chester County. But I want to make sure that opportunities come in for us. And also, who's not registered to vote? Raise your hand, change the devil. Make sure that you participate in your government. This is your government. It's only as good as you participate in it. So, please vote for me and vote for Beto. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamar. Thank you, Janet. I also want to recognize is Demisha Crawford here, Precinct 3, Justice of the Peace. She may have been earlier right here. Thank you for coming out today. Really, really, really. JP2, sorry, I wrote it down long. JP2, thanks for being here. Zephania Timmons, Precinct 2 Commissioner. Zephaniah, sorry. Not here? Okay. Appreciate that. Maxine Golightly, Harrison County Chair. Thank you, Maxine. Also being here every single time you're here to welcome us in. Thank you. All right, well, we are going to hang hang out for a little bit after we have a chance to listen to Dr. White. So I want to make sure that we give her our full attention. And then I'm going to stay here for anybody who wants to take a picture, has a follow-up conversation, or you just want to give me a chance to shake your hand. But I want to thank you so much for the honor of being with you again today at Wiley College. Thank you all very much.
Hello, Wiley. Hey, thank you guys for joining us today. On behalf of Wiley College and our 17th president, Dr. Herman J. Felton Jr., we want to say thank you for stopping by to speak to our students today. So we present you with that. Thank you so much. I also want to recognize, as he said, Ms. Christina Anderson and the Harrison County Democratic Party. They have been so supportive in helping us out. We have voter registration tables to your right. We also have cake. Pick up a slice of cake. And if this gets crowded, we also have a voter registration table right outside the CAF on your way out. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone. Hopefully something that you have heard today inspires you to do your part. Like they said, it's all in a vote, and we cannot do it without your vote. So I'm encouraging each of you to register to vote today. Even if you live out of state, there are things in place, processes in place to allow you to vote, and this will be where you will reside for the next 4 years of your life as you attend Wiley College. We have a voter registration table to our right. If you would like to take a picture with Beto, please line up on this wall, and then you would just proceed out that way.
We're going to do one group picture that we'd love to do before we do individual pictures. So if you can stand up, you can come over here. We would love to do a big group picture. Beto, if we can get you in the middle. Dr. White in the middle. You guys come all around. Come all around right in the front. Squeeze in. Everybody squeeze in. You probably need to do layers. There we go. Come up in the front. We need another group that are going to be able to sit in the front.
Sorry about that.
There you go. We need another row up in the front. There you go. Squat down there.
Do something dangerous.
All right. That looks good. Noah and Miles are going to help us move the chair. There you go.
Oh, I know, yes. I mean, I'm a normal sized person. I came up from the ship. Like, straight up, yes. You gotta be up to here on him, right? Like his elbow height. That's good for photos. That'd be good for photos. I might stand up on a chair. I'm trying to decide how dangerous I want to be right now.
It's fantastic. All right, everybody ready? Here we go, on the count of 3. We're going to say Wiley, like Betcha said, on the count of 3. The folks on that side, you want to squeeze down over here? For those of you that are not in a dress, that can come down, come up in the front, because I can't see everybody on the edge. There you go. Just like that. Perfect. A few more spaces up here. Come on up, come on up. There we go. It's a beautiful picture. Great. All right, on the count of 3, we're going to say Wiley. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go Wiley! All right, that's great. Couple more. Everybody got it? Yes? Good on this side. One more over here. Look over here. Perfect. Thank you, guys.